You work too hard on your music to let it be boring. Some people tend to focus so much on getting good at technically recording the tracks that they don't think about how to make those same tracks interesting. If the listener is bored, they don't care how well you recorded the tracks. They're probably going to skip on to the next thing. Hey, this is Joe Gilder from The Recording Revolution, and today I'm going to share with you 3 things you can do to make your tracks instantly more exciting. Up first, toggle between narrow and wide. If your mixes are always narrow, meaning you're pretty timid about panning things, it's not going to be as interesting as if you had things nice and wide. However, if everything's wide all the time, you sometimes miss out on an opportunity to go between narrow and wide. That can really grab the listener's attention. Here are a couple of ways to do that. Up first would be simply have the verse in mono and then the chorus in stereo, meaning maybe there's one instrument in the middle and then you introduce more stereo sounding elements as the chorus hits. It'll grab the listener's attention and it's like the mix explodes out to the left and to the right. One way I love to do this is with tripling guitars. So I'll have a single guitar up the middle with, say, a vocal, and then when the next section hits, I'll bring in 2 more guitars, here and here and here. They might all be playing the same thing, but it goes from mono to stereo in a way that is surprising and interesting without sounding too gimmicky. Speaking of gimmicky, you don't want to use automation to do this. So I've done it before where I've had a guitar up the middle, and then when it gets to the chorus, I automate that guitar to go to the side and I bring another guitar in. That feels weird. It leaves a hole in the middle. The listener is used to hearing that guitar in the middle, then you go and take it away. So even though you're adding another guitar on the side and you do get that stereo width we were talking about, you're losing that kind of anchor that was already there. I would much rather add even 2 additional guitars than just have the one moving and jumping around. I typically don't like any kind of panning automation. It's disconcerting for me as a listener. I've got an example to show you of this, specifically using that triple effect to go from kind of mono to stereo several times within a song. What you're about to hear is my song Help Me, and it starts with just a guitar up the middle and then a bunch of guitars come in on the sides, and then when the verse begins, it goes almost mono again, and there's these sections where it goes mono while I'm singing, stereo during a little interlude, and back and forth, and it makes things really interesting.
As long as I can remember, I was never afraid of the dark. As long as I've known you, I've always been too afraid of your heart.
Now, there's a reason I said narrow and not mono. You may have noticed that first acoustic guitar is technically stereo mic'd, so it has a little bit of width to it. So I'm not saying be really gimmicky about this and pan everything right up the middle and then jump out to the stereo panning. That's not it at all. It's more having elements that come and go in different places in the stereo spectrum. It can really be interesting and fun to do. Thing number 2, don't overlook percussion. When I was starting out in music, if you said the word percussion, I thought of like Latin percussion, which is certainly delightful and wonderful, but doesn't fit in every style of music. There's more to percussion than just that. Now, for me, I use things like a tambourine a lot in my productions. You may think, okay, big deal. It can have a huge impact. There's a song I remember from college where the first verse goes straight into the second verse, and the second verse always drew me in, and I finally sat down and tried to figure it out. And all that changed from verse 1 to verse 2 was the introduction of a tambourine, just doing chick, 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 chick. So you can do the shaken tambourine thing. You can also do single tambourine hits, a lot of times matched up with a snare drum, adds a whole different element to the song that's really helpful and cool. Next thing I like to use is a shaker. There's little egg shakers, there's the bigger gray and black shakers. I like to have several of them in the studio, but they can add a nice texture and movement that almost kind of glues the rhythm section together. For me personally, I'm not great at playing the shaker part for a good 3 minutes solid, so I'll try to play it for about 32 bars and then find a good 8 or 16 bar loop where I stayed in time well, and then I'll just copy and paste that around and use that as kind of a shaker loop. I don't really use loops that much. I tend to like to record it myself in the moment to capture the right vibe. Third thing I like to use all the time is cymbal swells. Now, not on every song, but there are occasions where there's a transition point, where a song is building into a chorus or building into a big drop. And sometimes the drop is so immediate, it feels a little wonky, or it feels good, but you know there should be just one more element that kind of helps the transition. That element for me oftentimes is a cymbal swell, which is just the sound of preferably a real recorded cymbal swell, but you can do it with reversing a cymbal and things like that, which is kind of the cousin of the cymbal swell, is just taking stuff and reversing it. I like to reverse low piano notes so that they swell in and create kind of this energy that almost scares you a little bit. Reverse cymbals can be good as well, and I've occasionally even just gone and recorded that sound and use that in a song. Actually, that's in the example that I want to show you. So this is my song, Someone to Blame. And there's this massive chorus section where I've got, you'll hear it. There's just dozens and dozens and dozens of tracks, just vocal tracks. There's like 13 vocal tracks or something. But it gets to the end in this big kind of climax on this, what is it? It's like a fully diminished chord, and then it drops off. And I wanted it to be instant, so I had this kind of sort of a sound. So I did the thing where I recorded that. I think I had a reverse cymbal swell and a reverse piano leading into that. If you listen carefully, you'll hear it. Then it goes into a quiet section where it's just me and a guitar for a second, and then it builds back up into a chorus. And on the build back up into the chorus, you can hear that cymbal swell in addition to another reverse piano swell where it kind of goes, does like that. Okay? Take a listen.
Someone to blame. Every time I try to break free, everyone's out to get me. Why won't they leave me alone? Oh, every time I try to break free, everyone's out to get me. Why won't they leave me alone? Panicking, need somewhere to aim, and I'm scrambling for someone. I'm panicking.
I really was into the reverse piano thing. Probably overused it on this song, but I loved it because it introduces even another element that's not quite there in a cymbal swell, but all of those combined together make for something really interesting. Thing number 3, work backwards. A lot of folks have problems managing the dynamics of their song. Either their song is one dynamic from start to end, or that final chorus doesn't hit hard like they really want it to, like they really want it to. So the first thing you need to do is focus your attention on, especially when you're mixing, getting that big section, that final chorus, whatever that is, getting that sounding amazing, big, full, huge, all of those words. Then work backwards from there. Make the other sections smaller in some way so that when it gets to the bigger section, there's room for it to grow. The big mistake people make is their earlier sections are just as big as their last section, and if there's no room to grow, then the last section feels like a bit of a letdown. So you want to go and make your verses smaller if you can by removing things, changing the parts themselves, taking away elements that are happening later in the song and introducing them earlier in the song. All of these things will add up to something that's really big and full and dynamic and interesting. So here's a song I produced last year. And you'll notice the song starts off pretty chill. And then if you look at the 3 choruses, there's one here, and one here. You'll notice it gets progressively bigger. More things are happening in the song as we go. So the primary way I love to handle dynamics is not with a bunch of mixing tricks, but by the way that I produce it. So for example, these green tracks here are my guitars. I didn't bring in these guitars until the very last chorus of the song. That's hard for me as a guitar player. I like to play the entire song all the way through, but that would make this song kind of boring. I wanted it to progress and grow and build, and that means having some restraint and only letting those guitars in at the end. Let me let you hear that. It just sounded like I said guitars in. That's not what I said. Letting those guitars in. Let me play that for you real quickly. I'll play the first chorus, and the second chorus, and the third chorus back to back, and you can hear how they get progressively bigger as you go.
Their lives, they're not something to believe in. Oh, their lives, they're not something to believe in. Oh, but their lives, they'll destroy me from within. But
Now, do I do this every time I produce a song? No. Sometimes the second and third chorus sound pretty much the same, but usually that first chorus has something missing. It still sounds good by itself, but there's room there to grow and to add something in later. Okay, I've got a little gift for you to help you do this. About 20 years ago, I was able to attend a session here in Nashville with a top Nashville percussionist. And I got him to play on one of my songs. And one of the things he played was several cymbal swells, and they were beautiful and amazing. We filled up the studio with his equipment. We had really nice microphones, and they sounded incredible. And I started to copy those out of that session and use them on sessions in the future. And I've been doing that ever since. They're delightful. There's several to choose from. Some are longer, some are shorter, but I've used them to no end. The ones that you heard in that second example, you probably heard them in that third example as well. Same exact cymbal swells from 20 years ago. And I'd like to give them to you as a gift. So to get those, go to recordingrevolution.com/swells, enter your email address, and that will send you a download link for those. And have fun making your tracks as interesting and exciting as possible.
they're beautiful.